Hello everyone, I'm Victor Herrera and you are watching Victor Sports Talk. Last night, here in San Antonio, Texas, the PFL came to town for the PPL 7, which is the first round of the playoffs for featherweights and light heavyweights. Now last night there was a total of 10 matches, 5 on the prelims and 5 on the main card. It was exciting. 10 total matches, 7 ended in a finish, with a very, very surprising upset that we will get to later in the show. Now to get things started in the prelims, there was a lot of who's who, some debuts, and another San Antonio native making a staple, putting on for his hometown. To get things started for the night, it was Billy Elikana, who only had one loss so far in his record, versus Chuck Campbell. Now, this was a match that one of the few that went the whole distance. Now, going to scorecards, a lot of people said, hey, it's Texas judging. You never know. Now, this was news to me. I didn't even take that into consideration. But that was the case. Chuck Campbell, who I felt dominated the whole fight, he pressed Elikana the entire night and had him playing defensive the entire 3 rounds. Now the second round, I felt Elikana may have won because of his striking ability, but I honestly thought there was no doubt that Chuck Campbell was going to get this win. Last night after that match, I honestly felt that they were trying to protect Billy Elikana and his record, and they ultimately gave him the split decision, which I did not agree with, and many of the colleagues that I was sitting by were very dumbfounded by this kind of result, and honestly thought we were going to be in for a long night if these matches were going to go to decision. However, this was the only one that we felt throughout the night out of the 3 that the judges got wrong. Now moving on, you got Chelsea Hackett making her PFL debut against the Kai Bennett. Now, they did not touch gloves. Hackett went in to try to touch gloves, and Kai Bennett said, no, I'm not going to do that. And for that, Hackett would make her pay. Hackett went on and put on a display of beautiful grappling and wrestling on the ground mixed with some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Every time Kai Bennett tried to put pressure on her and try to get out of the clinch or out from above, underneath her on the ground, Hackett would let her move and then readjust. This ultimately led Hackett getting a rear naked chokehold submission on her, causing her to tap out, winning her PFL debut. It was an amazing display of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. She just knew what to do at the right time. Now, the next fight, Anthony Ivy versus Carson Hardman. Now, many people sitting around me in the media section thought Hardman had the opportunity to pull off an upset. Now, Ivy, the San Antonio kid, a lot of people were hoping he would put on, and that's exactly what he did. Hardman came out really fast, and the tempo he was trying to set, he wanted to take the crowd out of the fight very, very early. That was very apparent. He did not want Ivy to start to fill the San Antonio crowd and start to rely on the hype of him. Now, Ivy shut down Hardman's fast attack to take the crowd out very quickly. He was able to establish control on the ground, which led to another submission. There was quite a few submissions on the night, and it was beautiful. Hardman was able to not get back to where he was on the attacking side and stayed on the ground the rest of the fight after the beginning, and just ultimately ended up getting choked out by a rear naked choke, which was awesome for Ivy because he was able to put on for his hometown of San Antonio and get that win in front of his fans, friends, and family. The fourth fight of the night, Desiree Yanez versus Lisa Malden. Now, this was another fight that a lot of people felt like Yanez had the advantage, that Yanez was going to get it done. But again, it was great work on the ground, which ultimately led Malden to getting the victory by a choke submission. And these were done early in the fight, so The fact that these fights were going didn't really leave us a lot to talk about because they weren't going the distance. They weren't even going, some weren't going to the second round, some weren't going to the third round. These fights were ending quick, and it's all because of the great ground game that a lot of these fighters had. Now, the last on the prelims fight was Thad Jean, undefeated, versus Ali Omar. Now, this was the biggest underdog to favorite split. It was the biggest odd split of the night. Thad Jean versus Ali Omar, and let me tell you this. I have a clip. Ali Omar exiting the cage, going back to the locker room. And he's all like, he hit me with the uppercut and I slipped and I couldn't regain my balance. And that's exactly what happened.
The uppercut, I slipped and he caught me on the wall.
Ali came out pretty strong. He came out confident. He came out like he was ready to prove a point that he was going to be competitive, and he looked competitive. But Thad Jean was just quick, and Thad Jean just has that little thing about him that you just feel in a special fighter. And it makes sense why he's undefeated. He definitely had the crowd going for him. Everybody was chanting his name. This is who they were excited to see, and he did not disappoint. He was able to get a first round TKO on Ali and added to his impressive start, as we will look for him to be in the season next year on the PFL. Now, to start the main card, things got excited with a bang. I mean, you got Elvin Espinoza, the first fighter I personally know to come out of Nicaragua. Like, this was impressive. Going up against the American Kiani Diggs. Diggs, a veteran, older, 6 years older, had more fights. You kind of wanted to go with the young talent, but you also wanted to give Diggs his respect and know that he's a veteran. He's been here before and he's done it. Now, Elvin Espinoza, undefeated, manhandled Diggs the whole fight. There were a couple of times where I felt Diggs was able to put pressure and strike. But if he got too close, Espinoza went for a takedown or went to a clinch and controlled the match from there. This was one that went to the judges and was a unanimous Espinoza win, which is awesome because there was like a section of 5 people that had Nicaragua gear and flags, and for him to put on for them was amazing to see, and it was an awesome experience. You could tell that it really meant something for him to not only continue his undefeated streak, but to make it in front of the few fans that he had that really knew him and was celebrating that nationalism with him. Now, to get the playoffs started, you had Martin Hamlet versus Impa Kasanganay. Now, I was surprised to see that Martin Hamlet was a 205 light heavyweight. This dude was massive. He easily looked 235, 240, and did not look to be a light heavyweight at all. And you could tell what he wanted to do early in this fight. He wanted to take that game to the ground. And Impa knew that. Impa got caught a little early in the clinch and going to the ground and was able to escape and make him chase him. Hamlet, where I felt messed up, was he was chasing at him and not kind of feeling him out. He was going very aggressive towards him to try to take him down, and Impa was able to just kind of bait him in and hit him with a combo that ultimately led to a TKO, and it was a beautiful one. I mean, for my section, just to paint a picture for you, it was right between 2 pillars of the cage, and all I see is a punch and hear the punch, and I see Hamlet look up at the ceiling and fall. And it was so beautiful to see. Impa moved on to the finals, where we will talk about his opponent here in a bit, but Impa was just stronger and faster. Although Hamlet was bigger and stronger, Impa just beat him to the spots. That is as simple as that. He used his speed to his advantage. Having the experience in the UFC that he does, ultimately I feel helped contribute to that. Gabriel Braga versus Chris Wade for the featherweight semifinal. Now, this was a beautiful match. I mean, first, second, and third, I won't lie to you, Chris Wade had the pressure. he got hit a lot. He took a lot of shots in all the rounds except the third. He dominated the third round. And Braga just showed that, like, when he's patient, he can time up some really nice punches, and he can also take some abuse too. Ultimately, this one went to a decision and was the last one to go to decision on the night. And although I'm not arguing with the result, I believe Braga won this fight. I think Chris Wade needed to do more than what he did in that third round. He needed a finish because he didn't win round 1 and he didn't win round 2. But the scoring, I don't agree with at all. So one judge, the first judge, said 30-27 in Wade. Now that I just can't get with. The second judge, 30-27 Braga. And I can't get with that either, because how can you not give Chris Wade the third round? Because he dominated that round. Got takedowns and just completely dominated the round. But then the third judge said 29-28 Braga. Now that's how I felt everybody should have been. A split decision. Everybody should have just said 29-28. Well, unanimous, honestly, in Braga's favor, but a closer scoring. And Braga ultimately would win to move on to the finals of the featherweight division. Now you get to the co-main event. Joshua Silveira, who a lot of people have put hype around him. Dad, a coach, a legendary coach at MMA Top Gym, and he is going up against Ty Flores, who has similar fights, but missed weight and just had some issues kind of coming in. Now this one, I felt could have went either way eventually. It never got there. Josh just did not come out like he should have. He seemed a little lethargic. He was relying a lot on his hands and didn't really mix in the kicks as much, although he was throwing in some knees. Now Ty Flores, he seemed very slow, very behind the beat. His kicks took way too much time to even start, to where Josh could get well out of the way and not even be in striking distance of them kicks. Now, this one ended in a TKO by Josh in the first round with knees to the head, as he had Ty clinched up and just kind of kept on. He got him one time and then just kept on, and eventually they called the match because Ty fell back and he was out of it. And that led Josh to go on to become the second finalist in the light heavyweights, and will face Impa in November for the finals. Now this right here was a great display of continuing what you want to do, and this marked his 9th first round finish, and that's what he wants. He wants to finish it early. And to have Impa and Josh get the first round knockouts, TKOs right there, definitely was really nice, because now you're getting two fighters that can finish fights early, and one has experience going later. Josh not so much. So it's going to be a really interesting final, and it's going to be fun to see. I mean, judging by last night, I won't lie, I think Impa's going to be the champion this year. He just was faster, and he knew where to get to the spot and how to get there. And for the main event, the featherweight semifinal, to see who was going to go on to face Braga in the final and a chance for $1 million. And it was number 1 seeded Bubba Jenkins versus the number 4 seeded Jesus Pinedo, who only got to that spot by knocking out last year's former champion with a knee to the head. Now, Bubba Jenkins, coming into this fight, he was very, very confident of himself. He was very assured that he was going to dominate Jesus Pinedo, and he was going to make sure that he was going to suplex him. And that's just what he said, I'm going to suplex him, which Bubba is known to be a wrestler. And he's been the poster child for this fight and for the PFL, mainly because of his ability to be on the ground and win. Now, Pinedo, in his interviews, he said, I know what he's going to do, and I know what I'm going to do to knock him out. And I will tell you this. The reactions of the crowd was crazy, because everybody was for Bubba at the beginning, and then it just shifted. It shifted completely for Pinedo to get this win as it dragged out, but that's because Pinedo he dominated, and it was very simple as that. He absolutely dominated. He felt the crowd started to get his back with the Latin community, and he mentioned that in his interview post-fight, that he loved visiting San Antonio, especially the Hispanic community, and the support that he had. And you could tell he used that to his advantage.
Es donde uno puede tener el apoyo hispano. ¿Te gustó pelear aquí?
Sí, definitivamente. San Antonio es un lugar muy bonito, ¿no? Muy confortable, la ciudad muy linda, la gente muy chévere, muy bonita también. Una experiencia muy buena, ¿no? Espero que a futuro vuelva a pelear aquí otra vez.
And he was ready to get in. When he came walking down the aisle to enter the cage, he was basically running. He knew he was on a mission, and he knew he had to get the extra point, because one thing before this fight started was on weigh-in, he missed weight. He had delays in his flight on Monday and part of Tuesday, which made his weight cut start on Wednesday, just the day before the fight. He wasn't able to make weight, so he already deducted a point off of the judge's scorecard. So ultimately he had to finish to win. Now to start this fight, Bubba, he went for the legs. He went for the takedowns. But he couldn't handle Pinedo on the ground. He got him down a couple of times, but he did nothing with him. All while Pinedo, he tore him apart with his boxing. He was able to pick apart his lack of defensive awareness and his boxing skills. He definitely made Bubba Jenkins look like a one-dimensional fighter, and that's only in wrestling. And the fact that Bubba lasted the first round amazes me. All hands and caps off to this guy, because he fought. I get it. You're fighting for a chance at $1 million, and he had his kids there, and he had his wife there, and everybody was there, and you want to put on for everybody that he mentioned in his pre-fight interview about helping him out if he was able to win the $1 million, but it didn't happen. Pinedo just dominated. There was a timeout called because they had to look at his eye, and ultimately when they finally called the fight, he wasn't there at the ring to hear the decision. He was being escorted back by medical personnel to be looked at. It was not a pretty sight for the Jenkins team, as Pinedo just had his way with him. And during the interview with Pinedo after the fight, he really didn't look that damaged. He had a couple of scratches, and that's about it. He had a field day. It was kind of a Crawford and Spence, except this one ended early, and in the second round early. And there was no way he was going to win unless he got a finish after the first round, because it just did not look good. Pinedo just had all the confidence in the world, and his boxing was just at a level that Jenkins just couldn't compete with. Ray Sefo was interviewed after the fights and was asked a series of questions that really had some great answers. He went on to discuss how important the Challenger Series was to the PFL, which this is very similar to Dana White's Contender Series and the Ultimate Fighter. This is where fighters come in and earn their spot and work their way up to the season. And this year, 3 of the 4 semifinalists came from that, and he went on to discuss how important that is for the PFL.
But as Tony said, 3 of the guys that made it to the finals are all from the Challenger Series. So congrats to those guys.
Yeah, and 2 of them from this year too, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess, like, what does that say to you? Like, we've got this developmental concept, but it's not like it's years in the making. We put people in right away.
Well, that's the great thing about the Challenger Series, is that some of the fighters that we put in there, have 10 plus fights, right? And those guys, once they come through, then it's easy to put them into the PFL Global, into the season, because they have enough experience to be able to compete with the rest. Of course, guys like Billy, who was one of the first fights tonight, also out of Vegas. He's 6-1 now, I believe, or 5-1. Yeah, obviously, he's not experienced enough to get into the season, so probably another year to develop him. But and the rest of the guys that were on the showcase fights. But yeah, I mean, the guys that showed up for the Challenger Series and won that and gained experience to get to be able to be in the season is truly amazing.
Ray was also asked about kind of what brought them to San Antonio, but more importantly, what venues are they looking for in the future. And he had very specific requirements on what he's looking for in a venue to hold these PFL events.
We're in a new venue tonight. I know we're going back to the theater, for the remainder of the events. But I guess, can you talk about kind of the business model moving forward? Like, is that the idea? Is to go out and find new places and travel this thing to more spots, or is it to stay kind of the familiar ventures?
Well, for us, it's more kind of, especially the way the format is set out, right? It's finding the places that's willing for us to set up for 3 weeks back to back. That's where, so for example, we were able to come here, but then for New York, for the next 2, it's in New York. So it's, again, because the way the season's format is laid out, for us, it's finding the places that allows us to bring everything in, set up, and leave it there for 3 weeks back to back. So, and whoever's willing to do that, we're in.
Ray was able to give us an update on the finals, and although it wasn't completely the whole information, it left us with enough to know when it will happen.
And yet for the finals?
Yes, I believe it's the 24th. I believe it's the 24th. It's one or the other, 24th or 25th. I think it's the 24th. I can't really say what the location is yet, because those are still in the works, and I think we're in final stages of signing that contract. So, but that's coming soon.
During the fight, there was a lot of advertising for the Francis Ngannou boxing match coming up. And as you know, he signed a deal with PFL, and Ray kind of got into what that sponsorship or partnership feels like for them two, and why they were pushing so hard for Francis Ngannou in his boxing match.
Oh, listen, we're here to support Francis also, and obviously he wants to do this boxing thing, and so he's part of our team, and so we want to support him, and we wish him nothing but the best.
And lastly, Ray Sefo discusses how Amanda Serrano, who holds 4 belts in the boxing world and fights August 5th on the Jake Paul and Nate Diaz card against Heather Hardy, who she defeated in 2019 for the belts, had just signed for the PFL. And kind of what's the plan for Amanda Serrano going forward, and what it looks like as she looks to jump into the cage and fight for the PFL fans.
She actually wants to, I think she has a boxing fight coming up soon, and then she wants to do, get into it. I think she's also had a couple of MMA fights, so she's not new to the MMA world, but it's something that she wants to do, and she's a 45er, and obviously for her, it's not jumping into the season, it's a matter of building her, and then we'll go from there.
Thank y'all for watching and listening to Victor Sports Talk. Again, this is presented by LegacyMaker Sports Network. Be sure to give us a follow and stay tuned, as we're going to have a lot more information coming at you on all sports and everything football especially. So stay tuned, and thank y'all for watching.